this workshop is very focused on verbal reasoning, which is the first section of the UCAT. Next slide, please. So Tasnim is going to be presenting the session today. She scored really well on her UCAT, and we're really grateful that she's presenting the session today. There's so much for you to learn from her, and she'll be sharing some useful insight and tips for this specific section. So basically, what is MedReadyGo? MedReadyGo is your all-in-one prep platform for getting into medical schools in the UK. We used to be focusing on interview preparation, but now we're also focusing on UCAT, which is one of the hardest components of applying into med school. So we'll be providing timed UCAT drills with unlimited practice for verbal reasoning, decision making, quantitative reasoning, and situational judgment under real exam timing. So it's going to be a direct replication of what you will see in your actual UCAT day. And also, we provide smart analytics, meaning you can see your accuracy, speed, and by question type, keep your streak alive and know exactly what to focus on and where you need to improve, which I think is incredibly useful when you're preparing for a test like the UCAT, which is where it's like a time marathon and you're just trying to beat the time and secure your marks. Also, we do MMI practice where, like I previously mentioned, it's mock interview stations with instant feedback so that you're ready for the next stage after the UCAT when you get called for interviews. And one of the main things I'd like to highlight is MedReadyGo is powered by AI, which is really useful. You get live feedback, and the AI tells you where you've lost marks and gives you explanations on questions where you're stuck on. Just to let you know, there are over hundreds of people who've used MedReadyGo to get into medical schools, and they've also secured offers. And alongside our competitors, Medify and MedEntry, we've got so many people using MedReadyGo to prepare for their UCAT as well, and they've got streaks going on, and I think they're really getting live feedback, and they can see their improvement through our smart analytics as well as our AI function. Next slide, please. So, why does verbal reasoning matter? It's the first section of the UCAT where you're incredibly nervous and you're trying to settle into the exam. It's incredibly time pressured, which makes this section very hard for many people, including myself. Three main habits that make you lose marks. Reading too much. You get really long passages in this section, and reading too much can actually do the opposite for you and make you lose marks. And using outside knowledge, where in the UCAT, you're only focusing on the passage. Do not use your outside knowledge and just believe what's said in the passage. And third main habit that make people lose marks is mismanaging the clock. And sometimes it's so easy to get distracted and focus on the question when the time is ticking. So it's very important that you focus on your time as well as your accuracy. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to pass the presentation over to my colleague, and she'll be taking over verbal reasoning. Over to you, Tasnim.
Thank you, Shana. So we're going to quickly go through what verbal reasoning is in a minute. So before we actually get into proper strategies, let's just take a look at what we're going to deal with. There are around 44 questions, or there are 44 questions across 11 passages. So approximately 4 questions per passage, with around 21 to 22 minutes to complete verbal reasoning. I worked out roughly 30 seconds per question, which I know doesn't sound like much when you say it out loud, and it kind of isn't. but you grow more used to it the more you practice. Remember, this is the first section of the UCAT, so it's also worth thinking about how you want to approach it mentally speaking. You don't want to spend the first few minutes panicking because you feel like you're behind. And it's also important to note there is also no negative marking, which becomes particularly important when we talk about time management later on. So, moving on, we've got two main question formats. And I know there are different types of questions within verbal reasoning, but for today's section, we're just going to group them into these two broad formats. The first is true, false, or can't tell, where you're deciding whether a statement is supported by the passage. And the second group we're going to talk about is what we'll call freestanding questions, where you have a question or an incomplete statement with several answer options. The reason I'm separating them like this is because the approach you use can be slightly different depending on the format you get. You don't necessarily want to approach every question in exactly the same way, but they are generally very similar. So we're going to go through each format and then I'll show you what this looks like with some live questions. Also, if you guys have any questions throughout, please put them in the chat and Shana and myself will go through them when we have the time. So we're going to dive into true, false, and can't tell. The easiest way I found to think about these questions is to ask yourself, can I prove this from the passage alone? So if the passage directly supports the statement or the statement must logically follow from what you've been told, then it should be true. If the passage directly contradicts the statement, then it should be false. And if you simply don't have enough information to decide either way, it's can't tell. I think the really important thing here for most people will be that can't tell doesn't mean the statement is probably false. Those two are not the same thing. It means that based on the information you've been given, you can't confidently say whether it's true or false. So there just won't be enough information to decide between the two. And that's where I think a lot of people, including myself, especially at the beginning, fell into the trap. So now we've got our common traps, and one of the biggest traps is making assumptions, kind of relating to what was just said. You might read a statement and think, well, that sounds reasonable, or I know this is probably true in real life, but general knowledge isn't what the question is going to be asking you, and it's not necessarily about what's true in real life. It's asking what follows from the particular passage given to you. So if you can't find evidence for it, you shouldn't automatically select true. It's also worth paying attention towards like all, never, only, and always. These are very strong claims, so you need to make sure the passage actually supports that level of certainty. On the other hand, you might get quantifiers like some, may, can, and often, which are less absolute. So, whenever you're unsure, come back to that question. Can I prove this from the passage alone? If there's no evidence, just put can't tell. Okay, so before we move on to freestanding questions, I'm gonna try and go through a live demo with you guys on some true, false, can't tell questions. So just give me a second, please. Okay, can you guys see the screen? Okay, thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, so this is on our MedReady Go platform. So you can see it's a very similar format to UCAT itself. So it's pretty useful when practicing. On the left, you can see our passage over here, and on the right is obviously our true, false, can't tell questions. We're gonna try to go through two passages, so 8 questions in total, and I'm gonna try and talk you guys through what I'll do. So, sorry, I cannot see the whole question. Okay, there you go. So, the question here, I would first look at the question because that passage is pretty long. You don't really want to read that all first, especially when you're just entering the exam. So what I'll do is the lurid version of events owes more to later writings than to documents produced at the time. So having just read that, okay, I might not necessarily know what lurid means, but we know we want to pick out the stem or the main idea for this question. So what I would look at is blurred version of events, and obviously there's something to do with writings and time. So given this is just a true false can't tell question, ideally, I'll just skim through the passage and scan for the words that are in this question or similar words that might relate to this question. So you guys might want to read through the passage. I see an author's opinion question. Yep. Do you see a different one? Okay, wait. Let me retry this. Okay, thank you for letting me know. Let me reshare this. Sorry. Okay, could you guys let me know what you see now? Is that a truth? No, that is not. I can see it myself. Sorry. Give me 1 second. It's hard to see. Not that. Not that either.
Would you mind resharing your screen if that's okay?
Yeah. Let me.
Thank you. Take your time, no worries.
Sorry, guys. Uh, okay, let's try this again. Okay. Can you guys see the question now? So sorry, I was
Yes.
talking to myself throughout that whole thing. Okay, I'm just gonna restart. Hopefully you've got an idea of what to do, but yeah, sorry again. So let's go through the question. Um, so I think you guys can read that statement on the right that I just read through to myself. Obviously it's a true, false, can't tell question, and the passage is on the left. So as I was saying, you want to look for the words within the statement, within the passage. But you do not have to understand every single word within the passage to get the answer. And I think that's what trips some people up. So just try and look for words on the right, they're on the left, basically, is the whole point. So I'm just gonna start skimming through the text and scanning for words that might match up. So the speculative episode known as Tulip Manual, to be fair, I would not recommend reading like that. Just read through. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but I'm just reading line by line, roughly, and seeing whether I can match up any words that are on the right relating to version of events or writing or time. And if you guys see the answer, feel free to type in the chat what you think the answer might be. There are a lot of adjectives that you don't necessarily need to know the definition of, so try not to get caught up on that. Okay, have you guys read through it? Feel free to tell me no. That's okay too. That is the whole passage. So, two big chunks of text to go through and around 30 seconds to spend on this one question. Keep in mind, there are 4 questions based on one passage, so it's okay to spend a bit more time on one question than another, but be wary of the time. Any answers? I'm gonna take that as false. Did you find anything directly contradicting the statement? So I'd just be a bit careful. Why would did you put false? Because that's a good instinct, obviously, if you can't find the information. Yeah. I think for this question, I would put can't tell, just because there's nothing telling me directly. It's not that I can see that the statement is false or true. So can't tell. If you're not sure, obviously you can flag up here. You can flag the question and come back to it if you have time. But I think for this one, I'm pretty confident with saying can't tell. So let me just move on. This tab is annoying me. Okay, sorry guys. Okay, next question. Can you guys see the next question, or are we still stuck on that?
We're still stuck on the same question.
Okay, give me a second. My laptop's acting weird. Okay, next. Hopefully it works now.
Yeah, it works fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. So the next statement we have is another true false can't tell question. It is the 19th century compendium was read more widely than the pamphlets that had circulated after the collapse. So we're going to use the same method we did as last time because it's the same sort of question. Scan the text. You don't necessarily have to understand everything. See if you can identify any words that are similar or any time periods in this case, like the 19th century, within the passage. Um, yeah, and maybe the collapse. So, do you guys remember anything about the collapse or maybe the 19th century being mentioned? Pamphlets. Okay, because I cannot see. Does anyone think they can identify where it is? I'm thinking later in the first paragraph, I can read something about the 19th century here, and a compendium of popular delusions. True, maybe? True, true. A lot of question marks. Anyone confident in their answer? The 19th century can't tell. Okay, so let's just read through that sentence, and if we can't tell still, we'll read the sentence above it. Okay, much of this dramatic account, however, derives not from contemporary ledgers, but from moralizing pamphlets circulated after the collapse and from a widely read 19th century compendium of popular delusions. And go back to our statement is the 19th century compendium was read more widely than the pamphlets that had circulated after the collapse. So I saw a few can't tells after the truths. I think in this case, is there anything directly stating that the compendium was read more widely than the pamphlets? I don't think so. Um, so in this case, I would personally put can't tell. Although, yeah, we found similar words or the same words, there's nothing directly stating that the compendium was read more widely, so can't tell would likely be the right answer in this case. And is that okay with everyone? Oh, yep. If you want to unmute or type something out. Okay. If you have a question, feel free to put it down in the chat. I saw a hand raise, but I'm gonna move on for now. If say if the keyword was oh, do you want to see the other paragraph? I'm pretty sure it's not in this paragraph, which is why I left it closer to the top, but obviously skim through it, see if you can find anything. If that's all right, I'm gonna move on now. Okay. Next question. Another true, false, can't tell. This one I'm gonna talk through a bit less, and you guys just give me your answers, and then I'll talk through later. So I'll start from the top of the passage, and just read the statement out loud, and then I'll give you guys some time to answer the question. So I'm not sure how to say that. Sorry if I butcher it. Goldgar's research found that participation in the tulip trade was spread evenly across every social class. Again, the options are A, B, or C, so true, false, can't tell. I'll give you guys like a minute max because obviously these questions are only meant to take 30 seconds. So, yeah. Falses. A lot of falses coming in. That's pretty good to see. Does anyone want me to scroll down or false? Okay. Of course, social class. So I think I'm gonna just talk through how I'd go through it. So with this statement, we're looking at gold garb. I would look at social class, and I'd obviously look at the tulip trade. So I just skim through the words, see if I can find anything about tulip trade or his name or social class. I found something about social rank. The price of retro present distributed. Right, I did not find anything about social class. Did you guys? So I'm gonna move on to the second paragraph. Hmm. Oh yeah. Okay, so I think what most people read was the sentence at the beginning of the second paragraph. So the surviving archival record complicates the legend. Oh, sorry, the second sentence. The historian Anne Goldgar, examining notarial documents and court papers, identified far fewer participants than the myth implies, and found them concentrated among prosperous merchants and skilled artisans rather than distributed across society. So that directly contradicts that statement that we were given. So yeah, I would agree with you guys. This is definitely a false. With that, let's move on to the next question. So when trading was at its peak, buyers took immediate physical possession of the bulbs they had purchased. Again, A, B, or C, true, false, can't tell. You guys read through and tell me if you want me to scroll down and send your answers in the chat. Okay, I'm gonna start talking through it just so I can find the answer myself. So how, oh, sorry, I zoomed in. So how I would look at it, it's mentioned trading, it's mentioned peak of trading, specifically immediate physical possession. So that word immediate really stands out for me because they may mention physical possession, but at a later point, bulbs and purchase. So yeah, I'll definitely look out for that immediate physical possession. Um, okay, we've got one answer and false, two answers. Okay, false. I'll look out for that. So again, just skim through the writing. By now, you should probably have an idea of where to look for the answer. Yep, okay, I would agree with you guys. This seems to be false, and I'll just read this sentence that's telling me that. Because the boom peaked while the bulbs lay dormant underground, the objects changing hands were not flowers but written promises to deliver in spring. That in itself, I think, is enough. Obviously, if you want confirmation, you could read on, but the fact that they were promises tells you that this physical possession was not immediate, so B would definitely be the right answer here. Okay, next question. I think this passage is a separate one, so I don't know if we should come back to this later if we have time. Um, but have you guys got the gist of these sort of questions? Yep. Okay. So if that's the case, we'll just move on, and if anyone has any questions, we can come back to this passage at a later time. So I'll start sharing the PowerPoint again. Okay. So we're back to the PowerPoint. Well done, guys. That was pretty good. You guys gave me answers that seem to be correct. I might actually just check these answers real briefly just to make sure we got them right. So let me do that. Tedshana, do you want to carry on, maybe? While I check the answers.
Hello.
Hi.
What was that? Sorry.
Do you want to just read through this slide? I'll come back
Oh,
to
yes.
it. Okay. Thank you.
So the second type of question, which is freestanding questions. So the basic technique we follow here when you encounter these type of questions, number one, stem first. know what you're looking for. So just read the question and look for the question stem. And then number two, locate, find the relevant information. So you look through the passage and you spot keywords so that you can read around that keyword to find the relevant information. And finally, you eliminate. So based off everything, is there a contradiction? Is it unsupported, supported, or is it too far? The question types you get here is like if it's true, opinion based, conclusion, and not or least as well. Tasnim, have you checked the answers?
I have, and in fact, we got all the questions that we did right. So well done, guys.
Amazing.
Yep. Okay. So I think we'll just carry on from here. Yeah, her description was pretty good. Thank you. So main point is, I guess, ask yourself again, does this contradict the passage? Is your answer actually supported, or your statement actually supported, or is the answer making a bigger claim than the passage allows us to make? There are several different types of questions that can come under this category, including questions about what's true, the author's opinion or tone, like you guys saw earlier, sorry about that, completing a conclusion, and negative questions where you're looking for something that is not true. We'll look at a couple of the trickier types of questions a bit later. So now we're going to be moving on to two traps that often come up. So two types of questions that are easy to misread are author opinion questions and negative questions. For author opinions, you need to distinguish between what the passage says and what the author actually thinks, which can be a bit tricky because they are interlinked obviously into one passage. A passage might present evidence or describe someone else's argument without necessarily agreeing with it. So look out for language that gives you clues about the author's attitude, such as words like striking, unfortunately, or surprisingly, vice versa as well. Then we have negative questions. These are questions where you're looking for something that is not, or perhaps the option that is least supported. These can be really easy to get wrong if you just miss out that negative part of the question. So make sure to take some time to really understand that question. Maybe reread a question twice just to make sure you're not missing anything. If you have the time, obviously, and make sure if you do see these words, take an extra second and make sure you've actually understood what the question is asking for and what you need to look for later on. Yeah, do you guys want to do a few more questions before we move on, based on these sort of questions? Okay, so let me just open that up. Does anyone have any questions while I get this up and running? Okay, I'll take that as no. Let's do some incomplete statements. If there's any specific requests, please do let me know. So again, we're gonna go onto the MedReadyGo platform. They have a bunch of questions that you can go through. Just to make sure you guys can see the screen. Yep. Okay. Yep.
Yes.
That's good. That's good to know. Okay. So on the left, again, we'll always have a passage on the left, and we have a statement or question on the right. There are four options this time, so just take that in mind while looking through the passage. I'm just going to read the passage out loud and try and pick through things that we might want to look for. So, the passage indicates that the counterintuitive conclusions of special relativity concerning time and length were reached. And then there are four options to look for or contradict within the passage. So, for this, I think you guys might want to read through the options and then look through the passage itself just to know what to look out for before you dive in to the passage. I know some people may have different approaches as well to read the passage first or at least skim through the passage and then look through the options. But I found that looking through the options first helps you to know what you're looking for before you have to try and take all those words in. So I'll just scroll to here. And if you guys find the answer you're confident with, feel free to type it into the chat. So I'd be looking for counterintuitive conclusions of special relativity and maybe time and length within the passage. And the passage is definitely intimidating, especially starting off with Albert Einstein, but just take in little pieces. B? Okay. Okay, B again. A lot of V's coming in. I'm gonna put that down for now. And I'm just gonna talk through how I'd get to that point because I do trust you guys that that is the right answer. So our options would be through repeated experimental testing of fast-moving objects, biological deduction from its two founding premises, by first showing that the speed of light varies with the observer's motion, and the last one would be only after the general theory of 1915 has been completed. So again, just look back at that statement, counterintuitive conclusions of special relativity concerning time and length, and then just skim the passage. You do not need to know what the special theory of relativity is, but immediately after that first sentence, we do see the special theory of relativity published in 1905 rests on two premises. So that does kind of point to B. Um, but obviously you carry on reading because there are other options. Rests on two premises. I'll just skim the rest. Mm, yeah, I think that is the strongest answer in this case. There is a mention of the general theory completed in 1915, obviously, ex but this is the extension of these ideas, and it does not talk about, it doesn't mention anything about only. So, yeah, B would be the strongest answer in this case. Fast moving objects. No, that's just not right because it's mentioning observer to run slowly and a moving rod is, yeah. So obviously there's a direct contradiction of option A. And for C, by first showing that the speed of light varies with the observer's motion. Mm, there's no direct mention of that, I don't think. And there's not a direct contradiction either. So it's similar to the can't tell questions. It just can't be the option. So again, B, it would be the right answer in this case. Okay, moving on, we've got the statement for two observers moving relative to one another. The passage makes clear that, and then you've got the four options that I think you guys can read through. Yeah, I'd recommend with the first question of any passage, make sure if you've got the time on your hands to just skim through the whole text so you're aware of where certain words are or like words that stand out are. So you don't have to keep going from the beginning to the end. Okay, does anyone think they have the answer? C, C. I think I'd agree with that as well. Mm, I'll just point out the sentence that makes me believe that. Actually, I'll read from the sentence above. So, from these premises, rather than from any new experiment, Einstein deduced that measurements of time and length are not absolute. A clock moving relative to an observer, so that's the main part that is in our statement over here, moving relative to one another, is judged by the observer to run slowly, and a moving rod is judged shorter along its direction of travel. Crucially, each observer perceives the other's clock and rulers as the distorted ones. Neither is privileged. So, distorted in and of itself can be a bit confusing, but because we read that sentence above it saying run slowly, that kind of just perfectly lines up with option C. So, again, I think I agree with you guys. Option C seems to be right. Obviously, if you have the time, then you can try and rule out the other options. But because you've only got 30 seconds on the clock, if you're confident with it, go with it. If you're not, then you can always flag and come back to it at a later point. So, moving on to the next question. The passage's account of E equals mc squared implies that a body which is at rest, and then we've got 4 options again. I'm gonna actually give you guys 30 seconds on a timer, and let's see if you guys can read through. Starting from now. Obviously, don't rush it if you're not confident, but oh, we've already got an answer. Oh, okay. Okay, you guys are good. Okay. Okay, yep. Yeah, well done, guys. I do agree with you. D seems to be the correct answer. It's directly stated within the passage. It's the last line of the first paragraph. So the same reasoning yielded the equivalence of mass and energy, and then it mentions the equation we're looking for, which is E equals mc squared. And this implies that even a body at rest possesses energy by virtue of its mass alone. And that's basically the exact wording of option D. So yeah, I'd agree with you guys. There's nothing negative about that. Yeah, good job, guys. And then I think the last question of this passage, again, I'll give you guys 30 seconds. Just read through the statement and see whether you can read through the options as well within that time. So within the general theory, gravity is best characterized as, and then your options. So look for gravity, look for characterization, maybe look for general theory itself. Okay, seeing bees. Yep, quite a few bees. Oh, sorry, that's the timer, guys. Yeah, again, I would agree with you guys. It seems to be B. I think in the second paragraph, you can see the mention of gravity quite a bit. So I'd automatically go to the second paragraph. And just reading through it, obviously the first sentence is a bit irrelevant, but if we find the mention of da, 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 Einstein reinterpreting gravity not as a force acting across space, but as the curvature of a combined space time geometry shaped by the presence of mass and energy. That is linking back to the general theory. So, again, yeah, I'd agree with you guys. It seems to be B in this case. Are you guys happy with those sort of questions? Because if you are, we can move on to the next sort of questions. If not, we can go through a bit more. Uh, I'm gonna assume everyone's okay. Let's just check the answers of these ones and see if we got them right. If not, we'll go through them again and see what we got wrong. So obviously you can see there's 4 more questions that we didn't go through. We can go through them later, but for now I'm just gonna put random answers. So obviously I don't recommend doing this in mini mocks, but in the actual test, if you see that you're running out of time, it's always better to put an answer rather than none. So I'm just gonna go A, B, C, D maybe. To go next, and obviously if anything's flagged, you can review it at a later point. I'm just gonna end the review. Okay, wait, let's see if we got the first few questions right. I can't see it. Okay, we got 4 out of 8. That's looking promising considering we did 4 questions. Let's review our answers. Okay, so we got the first question right, which is a good sign. And obviously, if you go on the MedReadyGo website, you can see why it's correct, which is pretty helpful. We're just going to move on to the second question. We also got the second question correct, pretty promising. Again, the explanation is here if you guys need it. Then we've got our third question, again, correct, so well done, guys. D. And then the fourth question. Yep, so we got all the questions we did correct. You guys seem pretty good at this already, so well done. With that, I think I'm gonna move on in terms of the PowerPoint. And if you guys have any more questions, feel free to leave in the chat and we can always come back to it. What is explained with AI? Good question. So I can show you that function right now if you'd like. Explain with AI. So if you're stuck on a question or you're just reviewing a question and you're wondering how you got something right, you can always just tap this little bubble in the corner and it will give you a very comprehensive reason to why certain options are right and the other options are wrong. So you can see here, it goes into a lot of depth and it's really useful in terms of when you want to understand where your weakness is. So if when I was weak with verbal reasoning, this would have been very useful, just spotting where I've missed things out. So you can see here, you answered correctly by choosing option B, and then it will go into a lot of depth on why certain things are right and certain things are wrong. So this is a highly used feature of MedReadyGo, and it's a big reason as to why you guys should use it, just because sometimes when you use sites, they will not tell you the reason as to why a question is right. So yeah, just keep that in mind when you go forward with your practice. Okay, so going back to the workshop. Okay, now, now we're going to be talking about locating information rather than just reading. So as I was saying earlier, these are massive paragraphs, and you don't want to be reading through the whole thing and trying to understand the whole thing. It's good if you do, but most of the time you just won't have the time or the mental capacity to. So you want to either scan for information or skim for information. So one of the biggest changes I made to my own approach to verbal reasoning was learning that you don't need to read through the entire passage. So if you're looking for a specific fact, you can always scan for keywords like we were trying to do. These could be names, dates, numbers, or unusual terms. Once you found the keyword, read the information around it to understand the context. But if you're answering a question about the overall idea, the author's opinion, or the general tone of the passage, scanning for one keyword probably isn't going to be enough. So that's when you might want to do a quick skim of the paragraph that's relevant or the whole passage if you have the time, looking at things like topic sentences to get a sense of the overall argument. So the key to this part is don't automatically read everything in the same way. Try and pluck out what the question's actually asking of you and then use the relevant method to do so. Our next point will be avoiding outside knowledge. And you guys have probably heard of this point quite a bit, but it is the biggest thing I think that trips people up, even if you don't realize. And it's just make sure that this passage that you read, there's going to be 11, but make sure each one has time to be your universe for that few minutes. Because you may know that the answer or the passage that they're giving you is completely wrong, but for those few minutes, it will be right. Everything they say is right. Because verbal reasoning just isn't testing whether you know the topic. So if the passage doesn't tell you something, you can't
I
assume
don't
it's
think
true.
that you're sharing your screen.
Am I not?
No, I cannot see it unless everyone else can see it.
Can you guys see it now?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Sorry, guys. It's a bit all over the place, but thank you for sticking with me. Okay. You guys heard all of that, right? I'm just gonna carry on unless anyone wants me to go through it again. Okay, I'm just gonna carry on. Okay. If the passage doesn't tell you something, you cannot assume it's true just because you happen to know it from somewhere else. So if the passage tells you that the sky is green, you will believe the sky is green for that question or for that passage, even if you know the sky outside is blue as you see it, right? So when you're answering these questions, separate what you know from what the passage tells you. And for the purpose of the question, the passage always wins. Just try and get that in your head. The passage is always right. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the time game. So, as mentioned earlier on, there are approximately 30 seconds per question. So, you really cannot afford to spend several minutes fighting with one question, which is why I tried to give you guys 30 seconds for a few of those questions. If you're stuck, flag it and move on. Do not be scared to flag a question. It's really, really common. And if you don't flag a question, I'll be a bit worried as to whether you're reading through the passages right. You can flag a question and move on and always come back to it when you have the time. I'd also recommend when you flag a question, just put down an answer in the case that you don't have the time to come back, because at least then you've had an answer and you have a chance of getting that mark. But remember, there's no negative marking. So for this section especially, just don't be scared to put an answer and move on. Yeah, so whatever you do, just don't leave the questions blank. And if you have absolutely no time left, guessing is better than nothing. You want to maximize the number of marks you can pick up across the whole section rather than getting one question perfectly right. Okay, so before we move on to the free fixes, we're just going to go through a few more questions um, on the sections we haven't gone through. Anyone have any questions before we do that? Just, yep, I'll get it. So we've gone through true, false, can't tell questions. We've also gone through incomplete statements. So next we're going to try and go through some according to questions. Okay. Please do tell me if this does not show, but hopefully this should share. Yep. Okay. Okay. So again, we've got a big chunky paragraph on the left and we've got our according to statement on the right. So we'll use a similar sort of method as we did earlier on. According to the passage, the change from a sea-level design to a lock system, and then we've got our four options again. So what I'll do is look for sea-level design, lock system, maybe change on the left paragraph. So yeah, let's try and look for that. Immediately, I do see sea-level design pop out at me. I think the second sentence. So I would probably read the sentence above and below that, just so I can understand the context of where that's coming in from. And if we can't find our answer there, then we can always move on to the next paragraph. C. Okay. Once we get a few more answers, then we'll lock in an answer. Does anyone want me to scroll down? I'll do it. Oh, okay. We've got contradicting answers, C and D. Okay. Anyone else want to have a guess or have a go? Another D. Okay. Another D, another. Okay, quite a few Ds coming in now. I think that's coming from the second paragraph. So I'll just read through the second paragraph with you guys. The United States assumed the works in 1904, the year after Panama, blah, blah, blah. You can read through that if you'd like, but it's not necessary. We're looking for first American chief engineer. So either prove it or disprove it, and that is in the next sentence. The decisive engineering judgment came from John Frank Stevens, the first American chief engineer, who abandoned the sea level ambition in favor of a system of locks feeding a great artificial lake. Okay, so immediately go back to the statement. According to the passage, they changed from a sea level design to a lock system. Yep, it's mentioned that. And then option D was introduced by the first American chief engineer, tick, that's fine, to overcome the height of the continental divide. Did it mention the continental divide? Da-da-da. Yep, it did later on, thereby solving the problem of raising vessels across the continental divide. So again, I think this one would be D. Well, I do understand where C was taken from because it does talk about reduced deaths. In the first paragraph, there's nothing directly linking that to the lock system or the sea level design. So for this one, we're going to choose D. Okay, moving on to the next statement. So the passage attributes each of the following to the French attempt except. So the main thing here would be looking at that except. When you're reading through questions quickly, it's very easy to miss that out. You could just read the first bit and then skip over that last bit entirely. And it's understandable. But that's why always try and double read a question if you can. So now look through those options and look for any words that match up. Scan through the text. Okay, we've got C. So I'd be looking for the French attempt somewhere within the passage or something to do with France, even. Any more answers? Is that we don't know, we want to flag and guess a C, I think, as they said. Because I think it's been around 30 seconds. In this case, if you are in the actual exam or doing a mock exam, for example, like you can do a Med Ready Go, you'd look in an answer you think it could be and flag and move on. So I think that's what we're going to do in this case, unless anyone else wants to have a go real quick. Remember, it's okay to flag if you guys want to flag. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna take that as a we can look and see for now, flag it and come back if we have the time. I cannot see the messages. See? Okay, okay. I'm seeing more C's, I think. Yep, okay. So let's just see if we can find that statement within the text in some shape or form. So the statement is, it drained and fumigated the breeding grounds of disease-carrying mosquitoes. So, and remember, we're looking for something, we're looking for the fact that this statement is excluded because it's an except statement. So, French attempt. Hmm. Yeah, I would agree with you guys. Down here, it's talking about the elimination of Although I'm not quite sure if that's. I will look that in for now, but yeah, let's look and see. Trust you guys for that. It does mention mosquitoes quite a few times, and I don't want to guide you guys wrong. For this question, what I'll do is eliminate all the other answers just because I can't find the exact thing, although I'm pretty sure you guys have. So I'd eliminate A, B, and C if I can, and then go for C. So let's just look this in for now. Move on. Another according to question. According to the passage, Carlos Finlay, and then there's the four options. I'll give you guys 30 seconds for that. And yeah, just let me know what you guys think. Okay, seeing a lot of it is coming in. Anyone think otherwise? This will be the last question that we're going to do based on this section. So if everyone wants to just give it a go, it doesn't matter if you're wrong or right. Okay, A. A, okay. I think everyone's pretty confident with A, so let's just look for that. Puts forward a cause of yellow fever that went unheeded during the French effort. Okay, so I'd be looking for yellow fever and maybe unheeded. So to just skim through yellow fever. Can you find any? Can you scan for that word maybe? I think the yellow fever was mentioned a bit later on. Oh, so first. Yep, the yellow fever is mentioned down here. Oh, and it's also mentioned in the first paragraph. So let's just read the first part. Landslides followed the rains, and yellow fever and malaria killed workers by the thousand. The eventual death toll exceeded 20,000. Though a Cuban physician, Carlos Finley, had argued as early as 1881 that a mosquito transmitted yellow fever, his theory was not acted upon at the time. Yeah, I mean, that in itself just tells you that A has to be right. If you have the time, obviously look for B, C, and D, but given that there's only 30 seconds per question, A seems pretty good. With that, I will check the answers, but Tachona can go through the rest of the slides with you guys while I check the answers for you. So let me just change back to Canva. You okay with carrying on?
Have we done the time game?
Yes, we have. We're on 3 fixes.
Perfect. All right. I'm just going to, yeah. So 3 main fixes that you can do to improve your overall technique and how to tackle verbal reasoning questions. 1, read smarter. Locate, don't automatically read. It's easier said than done because we're so used to reading every passage like we read our books. But when it comes to UCAT, it's completely different. Do not waste your time trying to read every single word of the passage. Try to skim and just locate and read around that word so that you can bank your time. Second one would be to trust the passage. Please do not use any outside knowledge when it comes to the UCAT. If they say that fishes can fly, just believe that fishes can fly. And there's no need to argue. And the third one is manage the clock. This one is the most important fixes because when it comes to UCAT, like you guys know, it's incredibly time pressured. So it's very important that you are running on track and not wasting your time. So please, please, please try as many questions as you can and go through our mock tests on our website to make sure that you're familiar and comfortable with the time pressure and that you can work around the clock. Flag, move, return. The flag option is one of the most useful when it comes to the UCAT. Please flag if you're unsure or stuck because you don't want to waste time. And move. And if you do have time at the very end, after answering all of the questions, come back to them. You can do them in multiple sweeps, and we'll talk about that in the future sessions as well. Next slide, please. So that's us. We're wrapping things up. It would be amazing if you guys could scan that QR code and give us a little feedback on today's session. I'll put the link up on the chat box as well. And if you do fill in the feedback form, you'll get access to our verbal reasoning mock as well. So I'm just going to put the link up on the chat. And whilst I'm doing that, if you guys do have any questions, please feel free to put them up on the chat or just unmute yourself and ask the question.
Thank you again, guys, especially for the participation. It was lovely to see you guys all joining in by the end of it. So, yeah, hope you are able to use the platform and maybe access that verbal reasoning mock because it'd be pretty helpful, especially with the feature concerning AI. Yeah, thank you again.
Just a minute, I'm trying to get the feedback link.
Even without the link, you guys can scan the QR code, but the link would be very useful. And if you guys have filled out the feedback form, please don't forget about our community. We have a WhatsApp community where you guys can ask questions if you aren't already in it. But yeah, we're always there to help you guys out. Thank you again.
And just to remind you guys that you'll get access to our free VR mini mock if you give us a feedback, which will be really helpful. And please feel free to explore our website as well.